I'm going to refer to something in a little while. I'm going to call it the Spurs strikers graveyard. And this guy has the mausoleum in the middle of it.
Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Crowing Cockerel podcast. I'm here with my co-host Mark. Hi Mark.
Hey, how you doing? Looking forward to this one?
Good. And my other co-host Thom. Hi Thom, how you doing?
Hello boys, I'm doing great.
And me, Graham, and it's great to meet up with you guys again. And we're going to have a good chat tonight based around the transfer window, but not the boring stuff, which is the in-the-know rumours that are going round that might or might not be true, and the delays around Levy getting his finger out and putting his money where his mouth is. We're going to go back into the history books and we're going to talk about transfer windows gone past, the ones that were exciting, the players that came in and we were buzzing for, but also the players that came in that we were buzzing for and then turned out to be frankly disappointing. And we're also going to talk about players that we were linked to, we were really excited about, all those lovely rumours, and it happens time and time again. And then it never happened. Perhaps worse than that, they went to a very close rival. So loads to get into. So where do you want to start, boys?
Well, I mean, as we mentioned, the hijackings of transfers, should we start there? Because we all know about the Willian story, of course. Struggle to even mention that name. That was one that there's so many that you hear about the news and you hear the rumours coming through and you're kind of really excited about it happening. And then that one, that was a real kick in the teeth. That was when I went well on my way to really hating Chelsea when they did that to us. But one that I didn't know is that those other ones also did the same to us, the old Gooners, with Emmanuel Petit. Now, I don't know how aware you are with this, but we were actually in line to sign Emmanuel Petit. He was in London. He was having a meeting with Alan Sugar. Arsenal somehow got to find out about it, and they managed to contact his agent. And so once they'd finished meeting with Alan Sugar, Petit managed to negotiate a bit of a delay in making a decision. Spurs paid his taxi to go back to the hotel, and by all accounts, Petit redirected that taxi, went and visited Arsene Wenger at his house, and that night Arsenal arranged to sign him for £3.5 million. So they absolutely stabbed us in the back with Emmanuel Petit, and what a player he would have been if he'd been in that Spurs team.
What do you think Alan Sugar said to him that made him so disinterested?
Well, I wonder whether, because obviously at the time there was a big French connection, wasn't there, at the club. Arsene Wenger came in the season before and he was building a brand new project. So I can understand it from his perspective. If he was, I'm not sure whether Vieira was already there. Probably not. I think he was a bit younger, wasn't he, Vieira? But, he certainly had some players coming in at the time. So I guess it was just a more attractive. And of course, I think Arsenal were doing much better in the league than us at the time. So yeah, I can understand why it was a more attractive proposition. But the other side of the coin is that we did the same thing to Manchester United to get Paul Gascoigne. By all accounts, again, Alex Ferguson had a meeting with Gascoigne and it was a done deal as far as he was concerned. He even went on holiday, onto his summer holidays, and he was then informed that Gascoigne had decided to join us instead. And apparently what swung the deal to bring him to Spurs was that we offered his mum and dad a house. And then his dad came back with a counter offer and said, well, if you're going to buy me a house with a garage, I need a car. So we offered him the car. And then the final cherry on top is that we then offered to buy his sister a sunbed. And that is what swung it for him.
There's always rumours, and some of them are true, some of them are not true.
Most of them are not true.
Most of them not true. But what from the annals of history that you can remember do you think was like a crazy rumour that you got really excited about? My one, do you remember Dybala?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we were going to get Dybala for 70 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Massive transfer fee. Peak of his powers from Juventus. Absolutely what we needed. A really fantastic sort of 10 to provide all the link up. You get behind Kane, and it's just going to be absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, it doesn't happen because something to do with image rights or a fax machine breaking down. And you just don't know, do you, if it was ever true or whether
Yeah.
it was Sky Sports News just making something up to keep people interested in the transfer window.
I mean, that one in particular, that did feel genuine, didn't it? It really did feel like that was happening. And then for it not to happen at the end, that was really disappointing because,
He would have been
what a player.
so good as well. He would have been
Yeah, what a
absolutely
player.
fantastic. And it was just really exciting.
It was a real marquee signing, wasn't it? That name, it's one of the big names in Europe. And to think that we were going to get it over the line, and it seemed like we were going to get it over the line, and then it didn't.
I have another player that we were consistently linked with, I think, over about 3 seasons, and that's Leandro Damio. He had a fantastic career with Internazionale in Serie A. He had 177 appearances and scored 87 goals. And it felt like I say, every other season we were getting linked with him, and every transfer window it was going to be nailed on that it was this year he was coming. And it never happened.
Yeah, the interesting thing about him, though, is that he never actually came to Europe, did he? I don't think.
He went to Real Betis, apparently. Had 3 games on loan at Real Betis and scored 0 goals. So for all intents and purposes, no.
So what I'm saying is he never did get that big move. I wonder whether it was part of it was his agent agitating for that big move, and actually, whether the rumours with us were ever true or not, or whether actually as a club we looked at it and we went, nah, you know what, I'm not so sure about that.
We probably dodged a bullet.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's plenty that we didn't dodge.
I do think we get linked with players just to get it in the news. But you're absolutely right, Tom. The number of transfer windows where we were going to sign Leandro Damião, and it was still exciting because even though you'd never seen him play, somebody said he was good in Brazil and was the next Pelé. So I think we were going to talk about a few players that we did sign, that we did get over the line, that were really quite exciting prospects. We were fully on board with. A lot of people bought the shirts, and then they just weren't great. So who wants to kick that one off?
I can start if you want. So my one that I wanted to talk about was part of the select group of players that we bought in with the Gareth Bale money.
Yeah,
obviously,
Beatles.
Yeah, and it was kind of like the unique opportunity that we had, that all of a sudden we were going to get this massive sum of cash. And actually, if you remember, what happened is that we went out and bought all these players before we officially sold Bale. So we got the business all done. And that's why everyone knew the Bale transfer was going to happen, because we suddenly started splashing all this cash that we didn't have. And the only way that we could do that is because we knew that we were getting it all back from the Bale deal anyway. But anyway, so one of the players that came in was Eric Lamela, and he came in to like a massive fanfare, a real young talent, got him from Roma. He was like £26 million. He had such a huge potential, but there was genuine excitement about him being such a young player. As a kid, Barcelona actually offered him kind of a similar sort of package to the one they did with Messi. They offered to bring him over from Argentina, obviously, this time, and relocate his parents, find them jobs and houses, the full package, because they were really excited about his potential. And I was doing a little bit of research on him as well. Apparently at 12 years old, he was playing for River Plate, and he scored like 120 goals in one season, and he was featured on the local news and everything. So you get these reports about these wonder players at youth level. He was one of them. Coming through the youth ranks, there was like genuine excitement about him. And so when he joined, you looked at it and you thought, okay, we might have a real genuine talent coming through here. Maybe someone that could even be better than the potential of the mighty Giovanni Dos Santos. And it just never happened, did it? It just never quite happened. Sparks of absolute brilliance. I mean, I don't know another player that has scored not 1, but 2 Rabona goals in their career. Yeah. The first one in Europe from about 25 yards out. I've never seen anyone score a Rabona from 25 yards out anyway, but he did that. And then obviously the famous one against Arsenal in the North London derby that I think went on and won the Puskás. But he came in good form. So the season the season before we signed him at Roma, he got 15 goals for Roma that season as like a 20-year-old. So it wasn't just as a kid. he was putting in performances for Roma, which obviously was what persuaded us to bring him to Spurs. But yeah, it just never quite happened. He seemed a little bit lightweight. And then obviously he had the injuries as well. He actually missed over 150 games for us during the period that he was here with injury. Now, I don't know whether if he had stayed fit and had a run of games, he would have shown his potential. To be honest, when he moved away from Spurs, he had flashes again, but he never really set the world on fire. But yeah, that was one that really came to mind as one that I was really excited to bring into the club, and it never quite happened for him.
So I've got my contribution to this little segment, and I was genuinely buzzing for this one because we had needed a front man for a while. I'm going to refer to something in a little while. I'm going to call it the Spurs strikers graveyard. And this guy has the mausoleum in the middle of it. And that is Roberto Soldado. So back in 2013, we paid 26 million for this guy. He was our record signing at the time, I think. And he came from Valencia, played, I think, 3 seasons there, over 140 games for them, 80-odd goals. So a proper, consistent striker, played in Europe, and I think was one of those players where we knew we needed someone up front, and he was going to be the guy, and he was proven. And he joined us. First game, he scored. It was a penalty against Crystal Palace, and that was about it. Because
First of many, surely.
Well, I hate to ruin the dream scenario, but in the end, after 2 seasons and 76 games, a total of 16 goals were scored, and yeah, he just never looked comfortable at that level.
But all things always happen for a reason, of course. The brilliant silver lining of the cloud that was Roberto Soldado being so awful is that he was so awful, we had to chuck in some unknown youngster called Harry Kane.
That is, yeah.
How very true.
Without Soldado being so terrible, Harry Kane would never have been chucked in when he was. And of course, every time he was chucked in, Kane scored. And in the end, he had no choice but to keep on playing Kane, and Soldado was finished.
Yeah, we can thank him for that.
There's the story, isn't there? And I don't know how true this is, and it may be completely unsubstantiated rumour just to be anti-Levy, but there is the story that he went and saw Sherwood. Sherwood was the first coach to drop Soldado for Kane, and apparently Levy went down and saw Tim Sherwood and said, "Why on earth are you dropping a £35 million player for a youth player?" And Tim Sherwood, I believe, he claims, how big and strong he was by telling Levy to go screw himself. So it's one of those, and totally with you, Tom, that it was absolutely fantastic. He was probably the last marquee signing because he was a European star. Absolute European star. He was fantastic for Valencia. They were a decent team then as well. They've obviously, fallen away massively now in Spain, but they were getting into the latter stages of Champions Leagues. They were up there in La Liga as well. But he was such a disaster, so poor compared to his reputation. If you look at all those players that were signed with the Bale money, so the Beatles that were signed,
Yeah.
was Soldado, Paulinho, Chadley, Ericsson, Lamela. Yeah, so Ericsson was probably the worth Bale in the end.
Yep.
He probably became as integral to Spurs as Bale was in that team. And Lamela as a squad player. So my one really exciting signing that I was absolutely buzzing over, again, he's a striker, but we're going back a little bit further, still Premier League era, but he was coming from a Champions League successful team. He was coming from a partnership that was banging the goals in everywhere. He was scoring fantastic amounts of goals per game, massive reputation, and he was a lot of money. And I remember thinking, my God, 11 million quid. Now we're a big club. Okay. And that player was Sergei Rebrov, the other half of the Rebrov-Shevchenko partnership. And he should have been amazing. He should have been brilliant. It was almost a Sheringham to the Klinsmann in that partnership with Shevchenko. He had a bit about him all across the board. Obviously, with Dynamo Kiev, they were brilliant in the Ukraine, but they were also brilliant across the Champions League as well. He scored 123 goals in 261 games. He was joint top scorer in the Champions League with 10 goals, okay, in 99-2000. Yeah, and they got to the last 16 at that point. So they only got to the last 16, but he'd already scored 10 goals.
That's mad.
11 million quid in May 2000 was a hell of a lot of money. That's a proper, we're going for it.
Yeah.
Striker. Played 29 games in his first season at Spurs, and he only scored 9 goals. So I'm going to suggest, and it may be controversial, Shevchenko was the better player out of those two.
Bombshell. Absolute bombshell. So, of course, me and Graham have both been speaking about strikers that have flopped. And I did think of, Rebrov, Soldado. I think the list of strikers that we've had over the years that have come in and just not done it. And this is what I think is our Spurs strikers graveyard. So, Soldado, Roman Pavlyuchenko,
Controversial.
Rebrov, Iverson.
Oh, no. Oh, that's harsh.
Adebayor, Helder Postiga.
Oh, yes. Yes. The only thing he ever did was score against England in the Euros. And that was it.
I ain't finished there. Grzegorz Raziak.
Wow.
I think he was already dead when we signed him.
Really? Because I don't think he was as dead as Vincent Janssen.
Yes, he was the one I had in my mind.
Yeah.
Clinton
and G, Bobby Zamora, and Darren Bent.
Yeah.
Oh, Darren Bent. No. See, now I'm going to support Darren Bent on this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He's not going in the graveyard. So Darren Bent gets a bad rep. And I think he gets a bad rep for one reason. And that was the famous Harry Redknapp quote where he said, he missed a sitter. And he said, my missus could have scored that. And I think since then, that was his reputation just completely down the toilet. But Darren Bent, I really liked it. Well, I liked him when we signed him, but it was a bit of a strange one because we actually already had a great partnership up front when we signed him. We had Berbatov and Keane already, and Defoe was at the club around that time as well. So bringing Bent in, he was leading scorer the past 2 seasons for Charlton when we signed him. So bringing him in, it's like, wow, we've now got 4 top quality strikers to rotate around.
Squad planning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting. But he was a victim of that because, again, Berbatov and Keane were so good together. So he didn't get a look in. And so his final stats don't sound as impressive. But actually, if you look at the number of goals he scored per minute he was on the pitch, his record is 0.57 goals per 90 minutes. Now, to put that into context, Harry Kane's is only 0.64.
Okay.
I know that's over a lot longer period, and I'm not for 1 second suggesting that Darren Bent is anywhere near as good as Harry Kane. But what I'm saying is that I think Darren Bent was unfairly derided at Spurs. I think when he got the opportunity to play, he scored goals, and I think he was a decent goal scorer for us. He just wasn't given the opportunity. So, yeah, I think he maybe didn't live up to his potential, but I think a lot of that was because he just simply didn't get the opportunity.
Okay, so let's dig up Darren Bent.
What I remember of Darren Bent is that, yes, he missed that chance that Sandra could have scored, but he also, very early on into his Spurs career, was through one-on-one versus Arsenal, and he messed it up properly. And I don't think the pressure of going from Charlton to Spurs was something that he could deal with. He didn't deal with the pressure well.
It was another, by the way, it was another club record fee. We were talking about club records. 16.5 million we paid for him. Another club record.
Yeah. And this is the thing, Spurs are derided far too much, in my opinion. Spurs are a massive club with a massive fan base. And I'm sorry, it's a pressurised environment. And a lot of the time, you're derided for just not being good enough as a club. And if you're part of that, it can really get players down. and really caused them issues. And I think Darren Bent was one of them. And you listen to him now and his commentary on TalkSport, isn't it, that he's on?
Yeah.
It's clearly affected him because he's still got a proper
Very
issue.
bitter against the club, isn't he?
But yeah, I mean, but he says he's an Arsenal fan. If you've dug him back up, Thom, I would be, sticking him back in that graveyard.
I was going to compromise. I was going to say, okay, we can dig him up and put Louis Sahar in instead. But, maybe they can go in together.
A lot of those cost a lot of money. We have a really, really bad track record of spending a lot of money. Our best signings haven't been the really, really big signings. The Berbatov, I think, was only about 10.5 million, wasn't he? Which at the time, not a small amount of money, but compared to Darren Bent, relatively small. They didn't come over with huge reputations. Modric, he wasn't a lot of money. Bale, huge prospect, wasn't a lot of money. Our best signings haven't been the club record signings. And of course, our most recent club record signing, although I think Solanke is now the record signing, isn't it? But the one before that was probably gives the whole board sleepless nights because, again, he was a guy that I was really excited about. He'd looked so good in the Champions League. He'd ripped Manchester City apart in the Champions League the season before. He was, again, that he was going to be the Dembele replacement, that big, strong guy in the middle of the park. He'd give him the ball. No one would get it off him. He'd take it round 6 players at a time and he'd run back and do it all again because just for the larks. There is no doubt he had a massive talent, but Ndombele, how badly did that go?
Crushingly disappointing.
Pochettino, I don't think fancied him from the start. He didn't get a lot of games. Jose Mourinho came in and, gave him a few games. He looked really good for a period of time, didn't he? And you could watch a YouTube short on Dembele. You honestly think he was better than Messi. That's how good he looks. And there's clips of him in a Spurs shirt, and you think, oh my God, if you didn't know better, you'd think he was the best player we've ever had.
Yeah, he was someone that could absolutely boss that midfield, couldn't he? When he was on, I think I remember him playing against Aston Villa. There was a game he played against Aston Villa, and he ran the show. He was unbelievable, and he just thought, oh my God, this is what all the hype is about. But he was just lazy, just didn't want to run.
Just couldn't play professional football at that level.
The thing that kept on coming back was just that he wouldn't stay fit.
Yeah.
And the suggestion was that was a choice.
Yeah, it's not like when you say he couldn't stay fit, like Lamella couldn't stay fit. He kept getting hip injuries. It wasn't a case of he'd do his ankle. It's a case of he couldn't run 100 metres. He'd look knackered after 5 minutes. And you think, how can you get to this stage? The board, and Daniel Levy is seen as the figure in that board. No wonder sometimes that they're scared of spending any money because he was on 200 grand a week. He was 62.5 million quid.
Yeah.
And it was just money absolutely down the drain. And you think, well, how can I risk that again? We're not ever going to be able to waste that sort of money.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case, doesn't it? Where you'll suddenly get this transfer where you sort of think, right, I've heard the fans, although I'm sure it's nothing to do with hearing the fans really, but he's like, right, we're going to go for it. We're going to make this marquee signing. We're going to splash out and we're really going to show that we mean business with making this signing. And like you say, it just doesn't happen. It just does not work.
And Dembele, you look at it again, he was coming in to replace Dembele and he was the right profile. He was the guy that could get it off the back four, even marked. You'd never get the ball off him. He'd spin away and you develop from that point. He wouldn't give the ball away. The trouble is he couldn't run the 10 yards to get the ball in the first place, and it was massively disappointing.
It was meant to be a box-to-box midfielder, but the boxes were too far away from him. What he was all right between, if he was all right between the 6-yard box and the edge of the penalty box, those boxes, but the two different penalty areas, too much distance. I think in recent times we've definitely been a lot better bringing the players in. I think it's hard to think of in the last year or two of a player that's come in and you could really label a flop. I can't really think off the top of my head of somebody that has really been super disappointing that's come in. So I think it feels like we're turning the corner a little bit now in terms of the recruitment, and hopefully, the next time that we do go and have a big outlay on somebody, they'll be able to prove that they are that top quality signing that we're all looking out for.
It'd be nice not to spank a ton of money on a loser.
It would. It really, really would.